Warning. What follows is 5 minutes of craven self-indulgence. If you experience feelings of nausea, waves of rage, or clumps of soul-crushing ennui, turn off your audio device, flop motionless into the arms of your loved ones, and be thankful for all that you have. This will not happen again. What follows has not been run past or vetted by my able colleague and co-host and only reflects my views on a number of areas, although there is a hope that there will be some points of agreement over the course of this ramble. As we hurtle towards the 50th episode and close in on the second year of this venture, I thought that a clarification of our mission statement was a little overdue. This show was not created with any firm concept in mind. In fact, Georgios and myself didn't really know each other. I'd recently quit another project I'd been working on. There were many reasons for that project not working, which I won't bore you with here, but I had some experience with doing a podcast in games, and I was in podcast limbo. At the time the idea came to do the show, I was walking across Spain. I'd had some money fall into my lap and decided to invest it in experience rather than things. The choices were sometime on a beach in Southeast Asia, or something a little more nourishing and a little less taxing on the liver. I plumped for the latter and so embarked on the 5-week hike across northern Spain that is the Camino de Santiago. The Camino offers a person a unique opportunity for thought and reflection, and among the many things I reflected on was the fact that I wasn't finished with the board game podcasting world. I wanted to start a new project. As I said, me and Georgios didn't really know each other, but he was the first and only person I thought of when I considered starting this new show, and if he'd said no, it probably wouldn't have happened at all. Berlin is the home to the first board gaming cafe outside of Asia. Berlin is the home of Edition Spielwiese, Watch Your Game and Frosted Games. It has hundreds of gaming groups across the city to cater to every taste of gaming that exists. I fell into the meetup group Berlin Board Gamers that pulls in hundreds of the similarly inclined from all over the world and then throws them together to game. It was through this group that I met Georgios. We'd played a few games together, including a particularly fractious game of TI3, and what struck me about him is that he seemed to know his stuff and he liked to talk. He liked to break down the game after we played it. He seemed inquisitive about what made a game good rather than how pretty it was. He didn't use the word fun as the definitive adjective when talking about a game's qualities. This led me, in a pilgrim's hostel, surrounded by the snorts and exhalations of others who were also looking for meaning in their lives, to send Georgios an email explaining that I wanted to do something, and he said he wanted to too. I'd interviewed TC for my previous show. He'd been the first real designer I'd really talked to, and Nick had been a frequent contributor on my previous venture, so I reached out to them to do segments, and to my astonishment, they both agreed. And so, with no fanfare, apart from the theme of the show, and no idea if anyone would listen, we launched. There was not a firm concept when we started. We had a structure, which has remained surprisingly stable, and a vague idea that we wanted to do something different. The show has changed a little over the previous 2 years. Some segments have come to a natural end and others run out of steam. We've had fabulous contributions from people like Tony Boydell and Kat Tobin, but our basic format has remained the same. TC does design, Nick deals with the academic side, and me and Georgios fill in the rest. The vagueness with which we started has firmed up somewhat over the last couple of years, to the point where I can offer you a short list of things that I think are vital to the show's identity. I'm sure that my partners could add, amend, or downright disagree with what I say here, but this is the beauty of this format. This is my 5 minutes. Number 1. I never want the show to be apolitical. Nothing happens in a vacuum. I want the show to be all-encompassing, and politics is pertinent to all of our lives, whether inside the hobby or out of it. And to ignore politics, regardless of if it's with a big P or a small p, is an unforgivable abnegation of responsibility. Brexit and Trump affect us as gamers as well as people, and if we're talking about games, sometimes we should be talking about that too. Number 2. I'm sure there are some people out there that object to this show on the basis that there is swearing. There seems to be a puritanical streak in this hobby a mile wide. I have my theories as to why, but I won't go into them here. We don't swear on the show to be cool or to stand out. The single reason that there is swearing on the show is because we swear. Podcasts are a different animal to network radio. Podcasts don't have the rigid formality of the radio. Listeners to a podcast should feel that they're at the table listening to the conversations. Listeners to a podcast should feel closer to the host of the show than they do to a person who is up there on the radio or on the TV. Podcasts are more democratic and less remote. It is media made by us and not them. For me to police my language because people feel that words that they probably use liberally themselves shouldn't have a place in this sort of medium is to rob me of what I bring to the show, my basic honesty. Number 3. I never want this show to be tyrannised by phrases like self-indulgent or pretentious or snobby. Nothing makes me angrier than the snide giggling behind the hand, or the denigration of someone because they choose to use a word longer than 3 syllables. Using and honing one's analytical capabilities is something to be admired rather than derided. I want to improve. That's why I read books. That's why I listen to Sam Harris and In Our Time. It's why I surround myself with people who are brighter than me. I truly aspire to get to the heart of things, and if that means sometimes using arcane words, it's not because I'm pretentious, it's because concepts have appellations, and it's remiss of us if we don't know how to use them. A vocabulary is an armoury, and I would rather carry an AK-47 than a stick with a balloon on the end. In fact, it is an endless frustration for me that we still, in our society, value strong over clever, and the unfortunate thing is, doesn't seem like changing anytime soon. Number 4. On the other hand, the show should never become an avenue for us to demonstrate how much we've read. A podcast should be listened to and therefore listenable, which is why simply sitting down in front of a mic, talking for a bit and then uploading to the internet can never be acceptable. I see the show as a professional undertaking and try as hard as possible to make it as good as possible. There was a couple of months earlier in the year where I dropped the ball. I apologise, and maybe one day in the future I'll talk about it. Number 5. Finally, the show should never be PR by stealth. We don't want to become a de facto marketing firm for board game companies. This is rife within the media in this hobby. We want to speak to interesting people about their interesting games, but never want to be bound to someone to the extent that we cannot be objective in what we do. And you can keep us honest in that. And that's it. That's really all I've got to say. I thank you for your indulgence and for listening to the show. I promise, on my side, that until the next big milestone, that the curtain will be resolutely unpulled back, and Georgios, Nick and TC will continue to talk cleverly, and I'll continue to talk about my genitals.